Okay, so picture this.
Okay. Yeah.
You're at a packed concert.
Right.
The music's pumping, the
Yep.
energy is electric.
Yeah.
Suddenly, someone yells, "Fire!"
Oh.
Panic surges through the crowd.
Wow.
You instinctively push on the exit door,
Mm-hmm.
but it opens inward.
Oh, no.
That seemingly small detail,
Yeah.
doors opening outward,
Mm-hmm.
is a direct result of a fire.
Okay.
So deadly.
Oh, wow.
It changed how we design buildings forever.
It's fascinating how a single detail,
Yes.
something we just take for granted today can hold such a profound story. It
Oh.
speaks to the power of tragedy
Yeah,
to shape our world in ways we rarely even consider.
exactly. And that's precisely what we're diving into today.
Okay.
The fascinating,
Mm-hmm.
often tragic history of fire codes.
Yeah.
From ancient civilizations to the present day,
Mm-hmm.
we'll explore how devastating fires have driven innovation,
Right.
leading to the safety measures we often overlook.
And it's interesting that the concern for fire safety isn't new. It's deeply woven into the fabric of human civilization going
Right.
back thousands of years.
Oh, absolutely. Our sources point to the Code of Hammurabi,
Mm-hmm.
which dates back to 1750 BCE.
Okay.
It held builders accountable if their houses collapsed
Yeah.
and killed someone.
Oh, wow.
Talk about early building regulations.
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
It shows that even in ancient times, there was this recognition that building practices could have life or death consequences.
Right.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
While the Code of Hammurabi addressed structural integrity,
Yeah.
it didn't specifically mention fire safety.
That's a good point. So when did fire safety explicitly enter the picture?
Well, we see early examples of fire ordinances
Okay.
emerging in medieval Europe.
Uh-huh.
Cities like London and Paris,
Yeah.
after experiencing devastating fires,
Uh-huh.
started implementing regulations to reduce fire risks.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Densely packed wooden buildings,
Yeah.
open flames everywhere.
Right.
It's a recipe for disaster.
Mhm. Exactly. And one of the most pivotal turning points was
Yeah.
the Great Fire of London in 1666.
Okay.
It destroyed a huge portion of the city,
Wow.
leading to a major shift in building practices.
That's the fire that led to London essentially being rebuilt with brick and stone, right?
Precisely.
Okay.
The Great Fire of London highlighted the vulnerability of wood as a building material,
Yeah.
particularly in densely populated areas.
Right.
So we see this shift towards more fire-resistant construction.
Okay.
But, and this is crucial,
Okay.
those changes weren't solely driven by altruism.
Oh. What do you mean?
Well, while the safety benefits were undeniable,
Mm.
there were also economic and political motivations at play.
Mm.
Rebuilding with brick and stone was seen as a way to modernize the city,
Okay.
increase property values,
Right.
and reduce the risk of future fires
Yeah.
that could disrupt trade and commerce.
So it was a combination of factors.
Mm-hmm.
A convergence of safety concerns,
Yes.
economic interests,
Uh-huh.
and political will.
Exactly. And that interplay of factors
Yeah.
is something we see throughout the history of fire codes.
Right.
It's rarely a simple story of progress.
Mm-hmm.
It's often a messy, complex process
Yeah.
driven by a mix of motivations.
That's a really insightful point.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you realize that even something as seemingly straightforward as fire safety
Right.
is deeply intertwined with social, economic, and political forces.
Absolutely. And that complexity becomes even more apparent.
Yeah.
As we move into the 19th century,
Yeah.
the era of industrialization and rapid urbanization.
Ah, yes. This is where things start to get really interesting.
Yeah.
We have cities exploding in size,
Mm-hmm.
new technologies emerging,
Right.
and unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
a dramatic increase in devastating urban fires.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Cities were essentially tinder boxes
Okay.
with tightly packed wooden structures
Mhm.
and limited firefighting capabilities.
And then, of course, we have the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. It's hard to even fathom the scale of the destruction.
Yeah.
Over 17,000 buildings destroyed.
Wow.
100,000 people homeless.
It's a stark reminder of how vulnerable we are to fire,
Yeah.
even with all our technological advancements.
Right.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
While the Great Chicago Fire is etched in our collective memory, what's often overlooked is that on the very same day,
Yeah.
another fire raged.
Okay.
One that was even more deadly.
Wait, really? I've never heard of that.
It's the Peshtigo Fire,
Okay.
a wildfire that swept through Wisconsin, killing an estimated 1,200 to 2,500 people.
Wow.
It's the deadliest wildfire in U.S. history,
Wow.
yet it's largely overshadowed by the Chicago Fire.
That's incredible. Why do you think that is?
Well, it speaks to a broader pattern
Okay.
we see throughout history.
Mm-hmm.
Urban fires often receive more attention than rural fires,
Right.
perhaps because they impact centers of commerce and population density.
That makes sense. But both fires, the Great Chicago Fire and the Peshtigo Fire,
Mm-hmm.
served as harsh wake-up calls,
Right.
forcing people to confront the urgent need for better fire safety measures.
Absolutely. These fires, though devastating,
Right.
were catalysts for change, leading to the development of more sophisticated firefighting equipment,
Okay.
the adoption of stricter building codes,
Mm-hmm.
and a growing awareness of the importance of fire prevention.
Right.
And this is crucial.
Okay.
The path to progress was far from smooth.
No. What were some of the obstacles?
Well, there was often resistance to change, particularly from businesses and property owners who saw fire safety regulations as costly and burdensome.
Okay.
There was also a lack of uniformity in building codes,
Right.
with different cities and states having different standards, which led to confusion and inconsistent enforcement.
So even as the need for better fire safety became clear, there were significant challenges to implementing meaningful change.
Exactly. It was a battle against complacency, inertia,
Right.
and often short-sighted economic interests.
Yeah.
And tragically, in some cases, it took another devastating fire to break through those barriers and force people to take action.
Which brings us to another pivotal moment in fire safety history.
Okay.
The Iroquois Theater Fire in 1903.
Ah, yes. A tragedy that exposed the deadly consequences of complacency and the gap between having safety regulations and actually enforcing them.
Over 600 people died in that fire.
Yeah.
And what's particularly chilling
Right.
is that it happened in a theater that was touted as fireproof.
That's right. And the irony is that the building did have some fire safety features, but they were either inadequate or not properly maintained.
Right.
For example, the exit doors.
Yeah.
While many opened inward, creating a deadly bottleneck as panicked patrons struggled to escape.
So it wasn't just about the presence of safety features, but their design and functionality.
Right.
A tragic lesson learned the hard way.
And a lesson that continues to resonate today. We see it in building collapses, industrial accidents, and yes, even in fires. The gap between having safety regulations on paper and ensuring they're effectively implemented and enforced remains a persistent challenge. The Iroquois Theater Fire was a turning point, but not just because of the sheer scale of the tragedy. It forced a reckoning with the fact that safety isn't just about having rule. It's about enforcing them. About vigilance. About understanding that even in a modern era, disaster can strike.
It's a sobering thought. And one that seems to echo throughout history. We often react to tragedy instead of preventing it. But looking at our sources, it seems like the aftermath of the Iroquois Fire did spark some major innovations.
Absolutely. Necessity is the mother of invention, as they say. The Iroquois Fire, along with other tragedies of the time, spurred a wave of new safety features that we now consider commonplace.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Well, one of the most significant was the widespread adoption of panic bars. Or crash bars, as they were sometimes called. Remember those inward opening doors? That proved so deadly at the Iroquois Theater? Panic bars addressed that problem head on.
The simple brilliance of a bar that you just push to open a door, even under pressure.
Exactly.
It's amazing how something so simple can be so effective.
And it wasn't just about the hardware. The Iroquois Fire also led to advancements in fire detection and suppression systems. Sprinkler systems, which had been around for a while, became much more reliable and widely adopted.
And let's not forget about the National Electrical Code. Which began to address the fire risks associated with electrical wiring. Electricity was still a relatively new technology at the time. And as its use expanded, so did the potential for electrical fires.
You're right. The early 20th century was a period of rapid technological advancement. And with those advancements came new fire risks that needed to be addressed. But here's where it gets interesting. While these technological innovations were crucial, There was also a growing recognition that fire safety couldn't just be about gadgets and gizmos.
Right.
It needed a more systematic approach, a framework for ensuring that buildings were designed and constructed with safety in mind.
So this is where the concept of model building codes comes into play, right?
Precisely. Before that, it was a patchwork of local ordinances, which could be confusing and inconsistent. The idea behind model building codes was to create a baseline of safety standards that could be adopted by cities and states across the country.
It sounds like a logical step.
Yeah.
But did it solve the problem of inconsistent fire safety?
To an extent, yes. It was a step towards greater uniformity and helped raise the bar for fire safety.
Right.
But, and this is important,
Okay.
these early model codes were still largely prescriptive, meaning they focused on dictating specific methods and materials rather than performance-based outcomes.
So instead of saying you must have a fire resistance rating of at least 1 hour for this wall, the code might specify the exact type and thickness of drywall to be used.
Exactly. That kind of prescriptive approach, while well-intentioned, could sometimes stifle innovation and lead to situations where a building technically met the code, but wasn't necessarily as safe as it could be.
Interesting point. So when did we start to see a shift towards more performance-based fire codes?
Well, that transition really gained momentum in the mid-20th century. World War II played a role as the focus on wartime production and efficiency highlighted the need for more flexible, outcome-oriented approaches to safety.
It seems like that era also marked a turning point.
Right.
In the way we thought about fire safety at a national level.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The publication of NFPA 101, Life Safety Code in 1927, was a major milestone.
Okay.
This document, which is still foundational today, established guidelines for protecting people in the event of a fire, emphasizing exit strategies, and categorizing buildings based on occupant load.
So it wasn't just about containing the fire.
Right.
It was about ensuring people could get out safely.
Exactly.
That seems like a major shift in thinking.
It was.
Okay.
And that shift continued to evolve.
Yeah.
Throughout the mid-20th century, with advancements in technology, lessons learned from tragic fires, and a growing recognition that fire safety was a national priority.
The research points to the Federal Fire Prevention and Control Act of 1974 as a game changer.
Right.
It established the U.S. Fire Administration and the National Fire Academy, essentially formalizing fire safety as a national concern.
Exactly. Right. And that act, along with the continued development of model building codes, laid the groundwork for the comprehensive fire codes we have today. Codes that address every aspect of fire prevention, containment, and evacuation.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit.
Okay.
Who are the key players in the world of fire codes today?
Well, there are two heavyweights, the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA, and the International Code Council, ICC.
Okay.
The NFPA publishes over 300 codes and standards, covering everything from sprinkler systems to electrical safety.
Right.
Their flagship document, NFPA 1, Fire Code, is a comprehensive guide. Addressing fire prevention, emergency planning, and inspection procedures.
So the NFPA is like the encyclopedia of fire safety. What about the ICC?
The ICC develops a suite of codes, including the International Fire Code, IFC, and the International Building Code, IBC.
Right.
These codes cover everything, from construction materials to the number and type of exits a building needs. They're incredibly detailed and are adopted by jurisdictions across the globe.
It sounds incredibly detailed.
Yeah.
Can you give us a peek inside these codes?
Sure.
What are some of the key elements they address?
Well, first and foremost, fire resistance.
Right.
Codes specify fire resistance ratings for walls, ceilings, and floors.
Right.
Dictating how long those elements must withstand fire before failing.
Right.
This helps to limit the spread of fire and buys time for occupants to evacuate and for firefighters to arrive.
Right. So it's not just about putting out the fire. It's about containing it.
Exactly.
And buying precious time.
Yes.
What else?
Another critical aspect is egress, which basically means getting people out of the building safely and efficiently.
Right.
Codes dictate how many exits are required. based on the building's occupancy.
Okay.
The width of those exits, whether they swing outward.
Right.
Remember the Iroquois Theater?
Oh, yeah.
And even the clarity and illumination of exit signs?
It's amazing how much thought goes into those seemingly simple details.
Right.
But it makes sense when you consider the potential consequences of a poorly designed exit.
Absolutely.
Right.
And it's not just about the exits themselves.
Oh,
Codes also address things like emergency lighting, fire alarm systems, and even the placement of fire extinguishers. Okay. All designed to help people navigate a burning building safely.
And of course, we have to talk about fire suppression systems.
Right.
Like sprinkler systems.
Yeah.
Those have become pretty much standards in most commercial buildings, haven't they?
They have, and for good reason.
Right.
Sprinklers are incredibly effective at controlling fires, often extinguishing them before they can spread.
Okay.
But the type of sprinkler system used depends on the building and its specific hazards.
Oh. Tell us more about that.
Sure.
I never realized there were different types of sprinkler systems.
There are.
Okay.
For instance, you have wet pipe systems, where the pipes are always filled with water, ready to discharge immediately.
Right.
When a sprinkler head is activated, then you have dry pipe systems, which are used in areas that might freeze, like unheated warehouses. The pipes are filled with pressurized air, and when a sprinkler head is activated, the air escapes, allowing water to flow into the pipes and out the sprinkler head.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So even something as seemingly straightforward as a sprinkler system has a lot of nuance to it.
It does.
What other types of fire suppression systems do we see?
Well, in addition to sprinklers, there are foam systems, which are often used for flammable liquid fires, and clean agent systems, which use special gases to extinguish fires without damaging sensitive equipment like computers or electronics. Each system has its pros and cons and is chosen based on the specific needs of the building and its potential fire hazards.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly.
It's about tailoring the fire protection systems to the specific risks of the building.
Precisely. And that's one of the key principles of modern fire codes, making a holistic view of fire safety, considering everything from the building's design and construction to the activities that take place inside and the potential hazards associated with those activities. It's about recognizing that fire safety is not just about reacting to fires, but about preventing them in the first place.
That's a really important point. And it makes you realize that fire codes are constantly evolving. They have to keep pace with new technologies and risks, right?
Absolutely. They're like a living document, constantly being updated and refined. For example, in the 1970s, we saw the widespread adoption of smoke alarms in homes. And the Fire Prevention and Control Act led to a more unified approach to fire safety at a national level. Then in the 1980s, there was a push for fire retardant materials in furniture and textiles to reduce the flammability of common household items.
So each decade seems to have a focus reflecting the evolving challenges of the time.
Exactly. The 1990s saw a focus on smoke control in high-rise buildings and crowd control at large gatherings as buildings got taller and more complex. And as events drew larger crowds, these issues became increasingly important.
And then as we entered the 21st century, technology began to play an even bigger role in fire safety, didn't it?
Absolutely. In the 2000s, we saw the rise of fire alarm system interoperability, ensuring that different systems in a building could talk to each other during a fire. We also saw new codes for solar panel safety as that technology became more widespread.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What about more recent developments?
Well, the 2010s brought new standards for energy-efficient and sustainable buildings, ensuring fire safety wasn't compromised in the quest for green design. Mass notification systems also became a priority, particularly in schools and campuses, to alert people quickly and efficiently in case of a fire or other emergency.
So it's about balancing sustainability with safety and ensuring that new technologies don't inadvertently introduce new fire risks.
Exactly. And in the 2020s, we're seeing updates for even more challenges. Codes addressing the use of mildly flammable refrigerants in HVAC systems and the integration of smart technology for fire detection and suppression. The world is constantly evolving, and
Yeah.
fire codes must evolve with it.
It really is a constant evolution.
It is.
But this all begs the question,
Okay.
how effective are fire codes? I mean, we still have major fires, right?
That's a crucial question.
Yeah.
While fire codes have undoubtedly made our world safer, they're only as good as their implementation and enforcement.
Right.
Tragically, history has shown that it sometimes takes another disaster to expose weaknesses and drive further reform.
I'm guessing this is where those impactful fires we've been discussing throughout our deep dive really come into play.
Yes.
Each one teaching us hard lessons.
Absolutely. Each tragedy has its own story, and understanding those stories is key to understanding the evolution of fire safety and why those outward opening doors are so important today.
Okay, let's dive into some specific cases and what they revealed.
Right.
We've already talked about the Iroquois Theater fire.
Yeah.
What other fires stand out?
Well, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in 1911
Okay.
is a heartbreaking example of how profit-driven decisions can have deadly consequences.
Right.
The factory owners had locked the exit doors to prevent theft, trapping workers inside during the fire.
Oh, wow.
The fire escapes inadequate and poorly maintained.
It's a horrific story.
It is.
But it led to some significant changes in workplace safety.
It did. Public outrage after the Triangle Fire forced lawmakers to act. Sweeping workplace safety reforms followed, including improved building codes, mandatory fire drills, and stricter enforcement of fire safety regulations, especially in factories and sweatshops.
It's a classic example of how tragedy can sometimes be the catalyst for much-needed progress.
Yeah.
However painful that process may be.
Unfortunately, that pattern repeats itself throughout history.
Right.
Let's jump ahead to 1942. And the Coconut Grove fire in Boston, this nightclub inferno, claimed the lives of over 492 people.
Wow.
Making it one of the deadliest nightclub fires in history.
What went wrong there?
Well,
the sources paint a pretty grim picture.
It was a perfect storm of fire hazards, overcrowding, flammable decorations, locked or blocked exits.
Yeah.
It was a disaster waiting to happen.
Right.
And what's even more tragic is that many of these issues had been highlighted in previous fires. But the lessons hadn't been fully learned or enforced.
So another case of history repeating itself, in a sense.
Yeah.
What impact did this fire have on fire codes?
The Coconut Grove fire led to significant changes in fire codes nationwide. Particularly for places of assembly, like nightclubs, theaters, and restaurants. Exit doors were required to be unlocked during business hours. Emergency lighting became mandatory. And there were stricter regulations on the use of flammable materials.
It also highlighted the critical role of crowd management and panic in fire situations, didn't it?
Absolutely. The chaos of the Coconut Grove fire, with people struggling to escape through narrow, blocked exits, led to a greater focus on designing spaces with clear egress pathways and implementing crowd control measures during emergencies.
So it was about understanding how people behave in a fire, how panic can quickly turn a manageable situation into a deadly one.
Exactly.
Right.
And that understanding led to changes not just in building codes, but also in emergency planning and training, with a greater emphasis
on preparing people to react calmly and efficiently in a fire.
This focus on human behavior in fires is a theme that seems to emerge again and again as we delve deeper into this topic.
It's a crucial aspect of fire safety.
Right.
We can have the best technology and the most stringent regulations. But if people don't understand how to react in a fire, or if they simply ignore safety precautions, those measures won't be as effective.
So it's not just about the hardware, it's about the software, the human element.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that brings us to another pivotal fire, the MGM Grand Fire in 1980.
Okay.
This one hit Las Vegas,
right?
A city known for its casinos and resorts.
What were the key lessons learned from the MGM Grand Fire?
The MGM Grand Fire was a stark reminder that even modern high-rise buildings are not immune to devastating fires.
Right.
The fire itself wasn't particularly large, but the thick, toxic smoke
from burning furniture and building materials spread rapidly through the casino and hotel tower, killing 85 people.
So it wasn't the flames themselves that were the biggest danger.
Right.
But the smoke?
Exactly.
Okay.
The MGM Grand Fire highlighted the deadly impact of smoke inhalation.
Right.
And the importance of smoke control systems,
All right.
especially in high-rise buildings.
Okay.
It led to stricter regulations for fire alarm systems, sprinkler systems, and the use of fire-retardant materials in furnishings.
It seems like the MGM Grand Fire was a wake-up call for the hospitality industry.
Right.
A realization that fire safety in these large, complex buildings needed to be taken even more seriously.
It was.
Right.
And the lessons learned from the MGM Grand Fire had ripple effects across the industry, leading to improvements in fire safety, not just in casinos, but also in hotels, convention centers, and other large venues.
We see a pattern here.
Yeah.
Each major fire, while tragic, seems to push the needle forward in fire safety.
They do.
Okay.
And these are just a few examples.
Right.
Countless other fires, big and small, have contributed to the evolution of fire codes and the way we think about safety in our built environment.
Right.
But there's one more fire we need to discuss, one that feels particularly relevant to the challenges of the 21st century. The Grenfell Tower fire in 2017, right?
Yes.
That one was truly horrifying.
It was.
A high-rise apartment building in London engulfed in flames. 72 people dead.
The Grenfell Tower fire.
Right.
It was a horrific tragedy that exposed the devastating consequences of using flammable cladding materials on high-rise buildings.
Right.
The fire spread rapidly up the exterior of the tower, trapping residents inside.
That image of the tower engulfed in flames is something I don't think I'll ever forget.
It's a haunting image.
Yeah.
And it sparked outrage.
And a global reckoning with building safety regulations.
Right.
Investigations revealed a complex web of factors that contributed to the tragedy, including inadequate fire safety measures, a lack of oversight, and cost-cutting decisions that prioritized cheaper, but ultimately more flammable materials.
So it wasn't just about the cladding itself, but a whole system that failed to prioritize safety.
Exactly.
Okay.
The Grenfell Tower fire highlighted the importance of considering the entire building system, not just individual components.
Right.
It also raised critical questions about the role of regulations, oversight, and enforcement in ensuring building safety.
And it led to bans on certain types of cladding.
Yes.
And a renewed focus on fire safety in high-rise residential buildings, right?
It did.
Okay.
The Grenfell Tower fire was a wake-up call for the construction industry and for governments around the world.
Yeah.
It forced a reevaluation of building codes, materials, and inspection processes.
Right.
And it sparked a global movement for safer, more resilient buildings.
This deep dive has really been eye-opening.
Yeah.
It's one thing to see a fire extinguisher on the wall.
Right.
Or a panic bar on a door. But it's another thing entirely to understand the long and often tragic journey that led to those safety features being there.
It's a journey that continues today, and it's one we all have a stake in.
Yeah.
Fire safety is a shared responsibility, and understanding its history can help us be more aware, more prepared, and ultimately safer in our everyday lives.
Right.
But fire safety isn't just about reacting to the past. It's about anticipating the future.
That's a great segue.
Thanks.
We've explored how fire codes have evolved over centuries, often driven by tragedy.
Right.
But what if we could flip the script?
Okay.
What if we could become more proactive, more predictive when it comes to fire safety?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And it's one that fire safety experts are grappling with right now. The good news is there's a lot of exciting work being done on this front.
Our sources mention a few key areas where this proactive approach is taking shape. One that really caught my eye is the use of smart technology.
That's right.
Okay.
We're talking about a whole new wave of innovation in fire safety, smart sensors, connected devices, real-time data analysis. These tools are giving us unprecedented insights into fire risks and how to mitigate them.
So instead of waiting for a fire to happen, we're using technology to potentially predict and prevent it.
Exactly.
That feels like a huge leap forward.
It is. Think about it. Traditional fire alarm systems are reactive. They sound the alarm after a fire has already started. But smart sensors can detect things like rising temperature, smoke particles, even the presence of certain gases long before a fire ignites.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's like having an early warning system for fire.
Exactly. And that early warning can make all the difference.
Right.
It gives building occupants more time to evacuate safely
Mm-hmm.
and allows firefighters to respond more quickly and effectively.
So we're not just talking about preventing the loss of life,
Right.
but also potentially minimizing property damage.
Precisely.
Okay.
And the benefits go beyond just individual buildings. Imagine a network of smart sensors across an entire city,
Right.
constantly monitoring fire risks,
Okay.
and feeding data into a central system.
Right.
That kind of real-time information could allow city officials to make smarter decisions about resource allocation, fire prevention strategies, even urban planning.
It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Right.
But it's happening right now.
It is.
Wow.
And it's not just science fiction. It's data-driven fire safety. Right. Another exciting development is the use of artificial intelligence, or AI.
AI for fire safety.
Yes.
That's a new one for me. What's the connection?
Well, AI is incredibly good at analyzing vast amounts of data and identifying patterns that humans might miss. In the context of fire safety.
Right.
AI can be used to assess fire risks in buildings, predict fire behavior, and even optimize evacuation routes.
So it's like having a virtual fire safety expert, constantly crunching numbers and looking for potential problems.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
And the beauty of AI is that it can learn and adapt over time, becoming even more accurate and effective as it gathers more data.
Okay, so we have smart technology and AI working behind the scenes to make our buildings safer.
Right.
What about the human side of things? How do we make sure people are prepared for a fire emergency?
That's a crucial piece of the puzzle. And it goes back to what we discussed earlier about education and awareness.
Right.
We need to move beyond the old school stop, drop, and roll approach to fire safety and equip people with the knowledge and skills.
Okay.
They need to make smart decisions in a fire emergency.
Our sources mention something called fire safety simulations.
Yes.
What exactly are those?
They're essentially virtual reality experiences that allow people to practice evacuating from a burning building.
Oh.
It's like a video game.
Right.
But for fire safety.
That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
I could see how that would be a lot more engaging and effective than just reading a fire safety pamphlet.
Exactly. It's about making fire safety training more interactive and immersive.
Right.
These simulations can expose people to different fire scenarios, teach them how to react under pressure, and help them develop muscle memory for evacuation procedures.
So it's about going beyond the theory.
Right.
And actually practicing what to do in a real-life fire situation.
Precisely.
Okay.
And with virtual reality technology becoming more accessible and affordable, I think we'll see fire safety simulations becoming a more common part of fire safety training in the future.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's one thing to know what to do in a fire.
Right.
But it's another thing entirely to actually do it when the adrenaline's pumping. And the smoke is filling the room.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And that's why practice is so important. It helps bridge the gap between knowing and doing, which can be life-saving in a fire emergency.
Well, this deep dive has been incredibly insightful.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is that fire safety is not just about the nuts and bolts of building codes and sprinkler systems. It's about understanding the complex relationship between humans and fire.
Yes.
A relationship that has shaped our history and continues to influence our present and future.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Fire has always been a double-edged sword.
Right.
It's a source of warmth, light, and energy, but also a force of destruction.
Okay.
And our challenge as a species is to harness the benefits of fire while mitigating its risks.
It's a delicate balance that requires constant vigilance, innovation, and a willingness to learn from the past.
I agree.
Okay.
We need to remember the lessons learned from tragedies like the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, the Coconut Grove fire, the MGM Grand Fire, and the Grenfell Tower Fire.
Right.
Those events serve as stark reminders that complacency, a disregard for safety, can have devastating consequences.
And as we move forward,
Right.
We need to embrace new technologies like smart sensors, AI.
And virtual reality.
Okay.
To enhance fire safety and prevention,
Right.
absolute. Technology can play a powerful role in making our world safer, but it's not a silver bullet.
Right.
We need to combine technological advancements with a deeper understanding of human behavior and a commitment to creating a culture of fire safety.
This deep dive has given me a newfound appreciation for the complexity and importance of fire safety.
Yeah.
And I hope it's done the same for you, our listener.
I believe it has. As we conclude this exploration, let's remember that the future of fire safety is not predetermined.
Right.
It's something we create together through our choices, our actions, and our commitment to making safety a priority.
Okay.
Let's choose to learn from the past, embrace innovation, and work together to build a future where fire is a force for good, not a source of tragedy.
Well said.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of fire codes. We hope you've gained a deeper understanding of this fascinating and often overlooked aspect of our built environment.
Absolutely.
Stay safe out there.